Very good. I think we're live. Let's see. Yeah, I think we're live. Very good. Okay. I got this other computer to make sure everything's good. Okay. All right. Very good. What's up, everyone? Today we are going to be building a JavaScript calculator. So this is a highly requested feature and I'm excited to build it. I hope you guys are excited to build it too. Let's see. Very good. We got someone here. Yo Shizzles. What's up? So I can see the chat from my other computer. If people have questions while I do this, just send something in the chat, and then periodically I will visit the chat to answer questions live. So, okay. It's weird because there's like a delay between what I'm saying, but it should work out fine. Okay, cool. So what we're going to be building is this calculator, and shout out to Web Dev Simplified. I put their YouTube channel in the description because they had a very nice design that I found, and I thought it was great for what we're going to be doing. So this is the design, if you can see it. Not too crazy, pretty simple, but I like how it looks. So for those who aren't familiar with any sort of web development, ideally this live stream is for people that have some background, and we're going to be trying to build projects to get you to the next level. So basically from beginner to anywhere in the intermediate stage. Okay, so whenever I start a project, it's very good to just start off, especially a vanilla JS project, a vanilla JavaScript project. You just want to have your HTML file. Your HTML file is your hypertext markup language that just shows you what is going to be on the page. And then also, let me turn this off. Also, you have your scripting file, your JS file. This is for the main code and making things dynamic. And then you got your style sheet. That's what makes things pretty. So we're just going to start off in the HTML file. And a neat trick, hopefully you're using VS Code. If not, I highly recommend it. But if you just do a exclamation point and then press enter. Ooh, there's a little bit of lag. Hold on. See if we can get, there we go. Yeah, there might be a little bit of lag given that my computer is trying to handle this while also streaming, but hopefully that won't be too much of an issue. Cool. So first things first, I installed an extension called Go Live. It makes development a lot easier. You can download it if you have VS Code in the extensions panel and just search like Go Live, and it makes things very simple. You can already actually see it on my computer right here. So if I click Go Live, assuming I'm saved, the server should now be started at this port. And you can see actually in the title we have document, which is similar to what we have here. Okay. So let's change that. Let's change that to calculator. Okay. And if we go here and make sure that's saved, we go here, the title has now been updated to calculator. So a couple other things we're going to want to do. We're going to want to bring in our style sheet. So that's just going to be a link, and we're going to reference it with styles.css. And the relationship is style sheet. So this relation attribute, it kind of just tells us what this resource is supposed to do for us. Okay. lot of the autocorrecting is lagging right now, but that shouldn't be too much of a problem. Cool. So next up, we want to also link in the script. So that's just going to be script source script.js. Cool. Okay. This is good. So if we refresh this, nothing should have changed because we didn't actually do anything yet. But let's change that. So let's add some of our HTML stuff. So you always typically want to just start with your nice little classic div, right? And the div is just like a container element. Let's see. Okay. Good. Okay. This looks good. I'm just making sure that there isn't any too much lag for you guys. Okay. So next up, we want to make one div. So when we look at this thing, this design, we have one section, and this is where like your operation is going to be. So whenever you type like a 2 or 3, it's going to show up here. And whenever you make a multiplication or division symbol, that's going to push the original output that you wrote to the top, kind of as the previous operand. I'm gonna write that out just so it makes more sense. But for now, the important part is we should have another div that'll represent the output, and then we're gonna have a bunch of buttons. So buttons are one of our favorite friends in HTML. It allows us to do a lot of cool stuff, and we're gonna get to that soon. So for example, one of our buttons is this all clear button. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to repeat this multiple times. Yeah, here we go. Okay. Okay, here we go. It's going to be about 18 buttons, I believe. Yeah. So anyway, each one of these buttons, we want to label it. So we have delete, division, all the way down. So if you're coding this along with me, you're just going to want to do a lot of copy paste, honestly, at the end of the day. And that's what programming mainly is. So programming is a lot of copy and pasting, searching things on the internet, debugging, all that stuff. Okay, so we still need 7. If things are lagging for you guys, I keep checking that on my other monitor. Just throw something in the chat, and I'll see what I can do to fix that. Okay. Oops. Yep. And then we got the period, the 0, and the equal sign. Okay. So that's all the buttons we need. And then I'm going to go ahead and also add what we need for the top. And what I meant earlier by this is, again, div. And if you aren't familiar with the class tag, it's basically a way of logically grouping elements in HTML so that you can style them together. And my VS Code is freaking out right now. Okay. Okay. Class equals, and there's going to be previous operand. Oh, question. So is there a more elegant way to create all the buttons? Yeah, you could probably make this more elegant. You could probably use some JavaScript to create them. My goal is to make this as simple as possible for people to follow along, but there is definitely ways you can do this more elegantly. And JavaScript will probably be your friend in that regard. Cool. So this is our base HTML, and right now we can already see that it's appearing on our page, right? So we have our all clear delete, all of our buttons, but obviously this looks nothing like this so far. So that's where our styling will come into play. So I'm going to go to the style sheet, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to style the body. And the body is the body tag that we talked about here. This is the body tag. And we want to add that linear gradient. Okay, so the background, we're going to do a linear gradient. Okay. And linear gradients, and this is what I really like about VS Code. It shows you the description of what you're looking at. So linear gradient is created by specifying a straight gradient line. So the first argument is you provide the direction. So we're going to the right. And the color we want to use, I believe it's AAFF. And the color we want to gradient to is, I believe it's FFAC. Cool. Yeah. There we go. So that looks pretty nice, right? Yeah, so this looks pretty nice. We got the gradient going. There's not much else we want to do here. I guess we can, I don't really want the padding here. If we look here, it's actually not that obvious yet, but we don't want the padding. So by that, I mean we can just do 0, margin, 0. And if that saves, that should take out, yeah, that should take out all that padding. Nice. Okay. The next thing I want to do is I want to set the font. I'm not sure what font this is, but let's change it. And, you know, I was never big on CSS, all this stuff, but this is where you get to the fun stuff, honestly. Just styling things, make things look nice. Excuse me. So I like the Calibri font personally. And you can kind of see the change in that font, right? So me personally, I like the Calibri font, so that's what I'm going to be using. But yeah. Okay, next. Looking back at this thing, we have a grid, right? And this grid, we have a bunch of buttons arranged in a grid format. So how do we do that? Well, first, let's go back to our HTML structure. Let's change this outer div into a class. Sorry about that. Ooh. That's not good. Okay, we're good. So I'm going to call this thing a calculator grid. The name of this class, and that's going to allow us to style this correctly. So, and to select a class in CSS, you start it with the period, right? So first thing we want to do is set the display. So there's a grid like I was saying, so we're going to use the grid display. Let's see how that's out. We're getting somewhere. Still this yet, but why don't we set, well, first I want this thing to go into the center, right? And the justify content attribute aligns thing on the x-axis. Yes, cool. What else do we want to do? So first, this is all in one column, so we have to fix that. Wow, we have more people in. Very good. Okay. So, believe it's template grid columns, if I remember correctly. And that's going to be, repeat that, 4 columns, each with 100 pixels, right? Let's see if that works. So that doesn't work. So that means I got this wrong, right? So this isn't the right action. And that happens a lot in programming. So this is a teaching moment because it's okay to. So what is the actual CSS attribute here? Right? Grid template columns. That's what it is. So whenever you're not sure about something, W3 Schools is usually a friend, or the official documentation on Mozilla. But notice the top 2 search options. One of the second ones is W3 Schools. That's usually your best friend when you're doing this type of stuff. Okay. Anyway, let's save that. And here we go. We now have 4 columns. Okay. Okay. Now we need the rows. So grid template rows. And we're going to repeat that. Do we want to repeat that? Let's see. Well, in this case, it's kind of weird because we have in total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 rows. So what we could do is we could say, 6, repeat 6, 100 pixels, right? And that does something like this for us. But I think what we want to do is treat this first row differently than the other 5 rows. All right, so what I mean by that is instead of doing 6, we change that to 5. And we start with a new row that's going to be in a range. And we can do that pretty easily with the min-max function. And this is going to, the minimum it's going to be is 120 pixels. And the maximum it can be is whatever, however much space we can take up, which is what this nice little auto thing does for us. Okay. Okay, this is getting good. I'm liking this. Okay, so next, there's probably more we can do here, but for now, I'm liking that. I think the next thing I want to do is notice how the all clear button and the equals button are only taking up 1 column when they should take up 2. So let's go back to our index.html and create a class that groups AC and equal. So we'll just say span 2. So remember, classes are just logical groupings of elements, right? And we use them to easily style things, right? Is it possible to resize or move the video screen? Quite a bit of browser view. Gotcha. Yeah. Why don't I do that? So it is taking up a lot of space. So I use OBS to handle all this stuff for me. Whoa, that is not what I want to do. Okay. This guy needs to get smaller. Here we go. Okay. That should make things a lot better. But if not, let me know. So I'm just waiting to see it on my own screen. Yeah. Okay, I think that looks better. Yeah. This is crazy. Okay, yeah. So my screen's a lot smaller now. Okay, that's better. Yeah, I can see that. Okay, nice. Cool. Make sure.
My screen's a lot smaller now.
Okay, nice. All right, that was good. So now we're going back to here to the style sheet. And our plan, we're working with the span to. So let's style the span to so that they can span two columns as the name suggests. So span to, okay. And what we want to do is we want to make them take up two rows or two columns, right? So believe it's this attribute. So let's see what happens there. Nice. So now AC, notice how AC and equals both take up two columns over here, which is what we want. Okay, this is good. So next thing I want to do is this guy over here, and you probably don't see it because there's no text in here right now, but typically what would be over here something like your previous operand might be something like, I don't know, 12 times, and then your current operand might be something like 2, right? And that would appear up here, but we want that to appear as its own row on the top, right? So let's fix that. And to do that, we have our output. Oh, we should make a new class over here called output. Yeah, this is good. So we're going to make a new class or style our class output. And what we want to do is put that thing on the top. So let's use grid column, and let's say, and a thing you can do with grid column is you can specify where to begin and where to end. So this syntax is basically saying span across the entire top. Right, nice. So now everything's kind of like lined up now. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna leave the output alone for a little bit. I realize we haven't done anything with styling our buttons, so let's do that. And this is where things are gonna actually start looking kind of pretty. So in order to style buttons, you can do what this syntax is basically saying is look at all buttons inside of calculator grid. Okay. And we're going to style them now. So first thing I want to do is modify the color. So let's say color is going to be RGBA, and it's going to be white, but with a little bit of transparency. So let's say 0.75 transparency. So it's going to take up some of the color behind it, right? And that's not what we want. We want background color, not color. There we go. Nice. That outline does not look good, so let's change the border. And let's say, we need a semicolon here. After any styling in CSS, you always should put your semicolon, or else you'll get errors. So 1 pixel solid white. Now this is looking good. It's looking a lot more similar to this now, right? You guys see that? Okay. So next thing we want to do is notice how the text is very small. Okay, so let's change that. So what we can do is we can go to the font size and we can do 2 REM. So basically 2 REM is basically saying twice the size of the default font size in the root HTML. So if I change that to 3, it would get even bigger, and then 1 would be pretty much the default standard. So now this is looking a lot closer to this, right? Okay. What else do we want to do here? One thing we want to do is modify the behavior. Oops, didn't want to do that. One thing we want to do is modify the behavior when you click. One thing I just noticed is when I click this button, this weird border appears. We don't want that. So let's go to outline and do none. So that gets rid of the border. And then next, what we want is we want to, whenever you hover over this button, two things should happen. We should see that the button changes in some way so that the user knows what they're clicking. And then two, we should change the cursor icon when we're around this. So to change the cursor icon, oh, question. So what does grid column 1 to -1 do? So that basically says, hey, go from the start, this is the column you should start on, the first column, all the way to the last column. So it's just like a cool syntax. So if we were to have like instead, you know, where's columns? If we were to instead have 5 columns, this would be robust against that because it would go all the way to 5 columns. So it's a little bit better than saying something like span 4, right? Because if we were to change the number of columns we had, it would just immediately adjust to that. So that's that. Where was I? We were in the button. Oh yeah, so cursor, pointer. So now notice that when I'm not in the button, my cursor is like this, but when I am in the button, my cursor changes to this little pointer, which is what we want. Okay, so to do the other thing I was talking about, which is change the behavior when we're hovering, you do this syntax, and VS Code gives you the description right there. It's basically what happens whenever you're hovering over a button, right? And there's a lot of things we can do here. We can make the font bigger, right? So notice how the number gets bigger when I do this. That's kind of cool. But that's also a little weird. So like for example here, delete almost overlaps with the border. So that's probably not what we want to do there. Instead, what we could do, we could also alternate the border, right? We could say this is like 3 pixels, and so that gets a lot bigger, right? But I think what will be the cleanest thing is if we just change this to 0.9. And so what that's going to do is make this less transparent and make it become more white, and I think that's very clean, right? Okay, this is good. So let's see, where's my image? Oh, that's not good. Ooh. Yeah, so the next thing we want to do is modify that top element. I'm not sure why this isn't appearing, but that's okay because we're close to being done with the design anyway. So going back to our output, and that's where we can start modifying what things will look like. And I also noticed that we are not really in the center right now. Okay, so we could try to align the content to the center, right? Either that or items. Ooh, that's not what we want to do. Yeah, I think that should be fine. Then when we get back to this, back to the output, that should ideally help there. Okay. Anyway, back to output. The first thing I want to do, even before I get to output, is modify the text inside of output, given that we still have access to it and we're seeing it. So what I want to do there is I want to change the font size. So right now this font size is very small. So I'm going to say, hey, font size, this should be 2.5 REM. Again, REM is a relative unit. It's basically relative to the default font size in the document. The color should be a transparent form of white. So let's do, that sounds good. Yeah, that sounds good. And then the current operand is going to be font size. Well, actually, we want the previous operand to be smaller than the current operand, right? So this is going to be 2.5 REM, and this is just going to be straight old white, right? So that's looking good. But we also need to change the background. So we'll say background color. This is going to be straight up black. I don't have any black right now, so I'm just going to alternate this like this. Yeah, that's looking better. Yeah, this is looking good. My design, oh, it's back. Here we go. Okay, so it looks like we have close to everything. The one big thing is this top part should be on the right-hand side. So how do we do that? Well, for starters, let's make this display flex, which basically is a type of display that makes laying out containers very simple in CSS. We should make the flex direction, which is what direction the content flows, as a column. Cool. We should do align items, I believe it is. Because basically what I'm trying to do now is I want to get these numbers to the end of the screen. So, yes, there we go. Nice. I think we need some padding. So that's going to be 10 pixels. Good. So that gives us more space. And then these numbers can get very long. So we want to know how to deal with breaking characters in the word. Okay. So if, for example, this 2 extended all the way down to the screen, what would happen? Well, we can do something called break word. Okay, here we go. And break all. Yes, that's what we want. So basically a word, or in this case, a number that I put into a calculator, can break at any character. So if you, it doesn't matter where you're breaking in the long number, essentially. So that's what we want. Now the last thing I want is I want these 2 things to kind of hug the top and bottom of the div, of the container. And to do that, I can't remember if it's justify. It might be this, because it's basically, yeah, so it's basically this thing space around, which is, and VS Code gives you the description right here. Items are evenly distributed around or in the line, right? So let's see if that does what we want. Yes, that does what we want. Good. This is looking good. Yeah, I think we have pretty much everything we want that is similar to here. So I'm actually going to close out this design because we don't really need it anymore. And if we decide we want to add more stuff, we can do that later. But this is looking pretty good for now for our design. Okay. So let's go back to our index.html, and looks like this is also fine. We don't need to add any more classes. So at this point, it looks like we're ready to start getting into our script, our actual scripting, which is good. Let me just see if there's any questions. Okay. So let's get into the scripting part of this, which is usually the fun part. I think the CSS is also a fun part. And we might get back to the CSS like I was saying. So yeah, so the first thing we want to do is we want to be able to access these items in our JavaScript. Okay. So one easy way to do that, there's a lot of ways. There's like a ton of ways. There's entire libraries about how you can interact with, elements in your HTML page. But we're going to make this super simple, and we're just going to add this data attribute. And this wasn't always a thing you could do in HTML. Oh, we have a question. So looks like we currently have the divide instead of the divide symbol. So what I would do there is I would just literally look up divide symbol, and you can pretty much just copy it from the internet. So let's see if this website has it. Okay, so let's see if this works. Oops. That is not what I want to do. All right. Yes, all right, it is in, but I accidentally added another button tag. Whoa. Okay, let's see if I can fix this. All right, that's gone. And that's gone. Okay, excuse me, yes, so now we have our division symbol. So I just copied it online. And let's see if that updates. So yeah, as we can see the calculator, here we go. Nice. So now this is close to what we were originally looking for. Okay, going back to JavaScript land. So we can add these data attributes basically that help us pretty easily query for items in the HTML. So, and what we want to do is query items based on what their function is. So something from 0 to 9, that's just a number. So we can classify this as like data number. And this is going to make more sense when we get into the actual JS. This is going to make more sense. I just saw the comment in the chat. This is going to make more sense when we go into the JavaScript. Okay. Okay. Okay, so that's all that. Then we can do something like data delete. This is going to be a data operation. Again, this is going to make more sense when we query this in the JavaScript. Data operation. We'll classify a period as a data number. Okay, this is good. I don't think we have, oh, we still need one for AC, so we'll call that data AC. Okay, and then this for previous operand, that'll just be previous operand. And then class data current operand. Okay. Okay. This is good. So now going into the script. So one thing we're actually going to want to do, I just thought of this, is this script loads at the same time that the HTML loads. And if we try to access items in the HTML before they're done loading, we'll get an error. So in order to prevent that from happening, we can add this defer key. And VS Code kind of explains it for you. Long story short, it just means, hey, don't use the JavaScript until the HTML is loaded. So it saves us from any weird errors that are associated with that. So there's that. Okay, so let's grab our HTML elements. So we'll do our number buttons equals documents dot query selector all. Okay. And data number. Okay. So that should grab everything that's a number. So we can kind of check if this works using console.log. And if there isn't a lot of lag, hopefully I can pull up the Chrome inspector for you guys so we can see whether or not that worked. Oh, this is bugging. What's going on here? Oh, here we go. Okay. Okay, our server is not liking us right now. Let's just restart our server. So this, I've noticed this can happen sometimes with live server. I'm not really sure why it happens, but maybe something's getting cached. I'm not sure. But typically what you have to do is just reload, stop the server, and start it again, and you'll be fine. Okay, so we are back. Looks like no comments right now. Okay. So if you're not familiar with the Chrome Inspector tool, this is a very good way of debugging your JavaScript. And again, we have an issue. Not sure why. Okay. Let's make sure we're loading the right guy. So, oh, see, this is why. So we call this scripts.js when it should be scripts.js. That's not good. So our server couldn't find a resource. So yeah, I should have realized that, because the error that we got in the console was that there was a resource we couldn't find, right? And now I get a new error. So again, this is why the Chrome Inspector is so good, because it tells you what error you are going through. So in this case, we have uncaught type error. Query select all is not a function. So you guys see that this is not the right way to spell it, obviously. Excuse me. So we're just gonna call this query selector all, and then that should help us out a lot. And I still have another typo. I didn't put the E here, so hopefully that's the last typo. Nice. So notice how we got 11 buttons, and these are all of the buttons that we have in our calculator, right? So long story short, this is just a way to grab items from the HTML. And there are a lot of ways you can grab items. This is just one simple way to do it. But yeah, let's continue. So we're gonna do this for every type of button or text. So we have the operation buttons, right? And that's going to be data operation. We have equal button, equals button, and we're going to do query selector since we're only getting one. Data equals, we have the all clear button. Oh, that's not good. No, I called it AC, didn't I? Yeah, I think I called it AC. let's see. Yeah, I call it data AC. And then data delete, we have operations. We just need data AC. Sorry, delete. And notice how the Chrome inspector is complaining because we had another declaration of number buttons. And a const, you can't, whenever you declare something as a const in JavaScript or a constant, you can't reassign the variable. You can, however, do that with something like let's, and we'll see that later. Okay, I think that's everything. No, I'm missing something. I'm missing the previous operand and the current operand. So previous operand div equals document, and then we'll get the query selector. Okay, this is good. Also, just as a logistics thing, so a lot of people that have been interested in this sort of thing live in different time zones all across the world. So a lot of people couldn't make it at this time. So what I'm going to do is, obviously this is on YouTube, so people will be able to see it again. I'll see if I can clean up any parts of the video and just make it publicly available. And if you're not already subscribed, please subscribe. That'd be great. And then you can get more notifications when I do stuff like this. I'm planning on doing probably longer deep dive sort of videos. This video is only probably going to be, oh wow, I've already been here for 47 minutes. But yeah, I'm thinking about making these sort of live stream projects, or at least this one, just an hour long and some change maybe. We'll see how close we get to that though. Yeah, so I'm gonna be more on the side of longer deep dive videos in what I do. So, alrighty. So we're just printing this all out just so you guys can see, and just because I also like doing this just to make sure I didn't make any mistakes. What's everything, to make sure we queried everything we wanted to query, basically. Okay, nice. So notice how we got everything, and you can kind of see in the actual HTML that it's highlighting the element that got highlighted. So that's the previous operand, the current operand, the data AC. We also have, oh, I do not want query selector all for this. That returns a list. We just want a button. So delete, and then the operations and the numbers. So we got everything. This is good. Now, next thing I'm going to do is actually make these things do something. So before we can make these numbers do anything, we need to create an abstraction of what a calculator is in our JavaScript. So what I mean by that is how even are we going to make the computations that our calculator needs, right? How are we going to do stuff like addition, all that stuff? The best answer is normally making a class. So I'm going to make something called a class calculator. And classes are the roots of object-oriented programming. And me, I like to style everything. So I'm pretty big on adding comments and stuff. So in this case, I'm going to say, performs basic calculations. Okay. So the constructor, this calculator is going to take two things. It's going to take a previous operand div, and it's going to take a current operand div. Okay. This is good. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to say, hey, this previous operand div equals, come on. There we go. There we go. So, and then this dot current operand div equals current operand div. Okay. Again, I like to style things. So this is a private variable, and it is also a constant. And the type of this thing is an elements, an HTML elements. Okay. Same thing for here. So I generally think it's always great to have this sort of documentation to know what you're working with, including on the constructor. So, you know, this tells us what our type is. Again, we have, oops, not numbers, we have 2 elements and an elements, okay? And we don't really need a description here. This is just a constructor, okay? Okay, this is looking good. So, long story short, this calculator takes 2 elements or 2 arguments, which are basically 2 HTML elements that are divs. And we're going to see why that's important soon. And then we also need to create 2 parts to this. So first, we're going to create the operation. So this is the current operation that this thing is using. It's just going to be a string. And I'll come back to style this very soon. So, and then we're also going to need the previous operand, okay, that we're working with, and the current operand that we're working with. Okay, this is all going to make sense very soon. So now that we have our constructor, we can create this calculator out in the wild. Also, another thing I like to do is I don't like to have all this code just kind of out there. So I'm just going to create a run function, and I'm going to put everything in there. Okay, this is good. And then at the bottom, I'm going to be like run. All right, bet. We're making moves right now. This is good. I don't really need this anymore. Also, we should clean this up because this is where the magic's going to happen. So that's good. Okay. Okay, nothing in the chat right now. All right, so let's create the calculator. So we're going to say, hey, const calculator equals new calculator. And then we're going to pass in the previous operand div and the current operand div. Okay, so this is good. Now we want to do something with that calculator, right? So the way we do something with that calculator is based on how the user interacts with these buttons. So we need to attach some sort of action to all of these different buttons, right? And to do this, we can just say, hey, number buttons dot for each. Okay. And that's not what we want to do. We're going to say button. Okay. And then button dot add event listener. Okay. Just like that. Okay, finally. So now we know our button. we have our button. For each number button, we need to do something. So what we're going to do is whenever we tap one of these numbers, it should appear over here in the current operand, right? So we should tell our calculator, hey, calculator, append a number whenever we click a number button. So we'll be like button dot inner text. That gets the text inside of the button, okay? And so that will append a number to the calculator. We haven't created this append number function yet, but let's do that now. So, and also, actually I'll go back to that. So append number takes one argument, which is the number to append. And we're basically going to say, hey, this current operand, okay, equals this dot current operand, make sure it's a string, plus number dot toString. Okay, so that kind of just appends that number there. So save that, try to do something, nothing happens. Okay, and the reason for that is because we haven't actually altered anything in the display yet. So to do that, we'll add another function called update display. Yes, this doesn't need any arguments. So, and we're gonna say, hey, current div, you should become dot inner text. You should set yourself to whatever is in the current operand. Okay. Let's try this again. Okay. Nothing still, which is good because the reason this is good is we have an error, and errors are good because they provide great teaching moments. So I like to use console log statements, and I like to go back into the Chrome inspector to see what's going on. So in this case, for whatever reason, oh, I didn't even call update display. So, but let's just go through the exercise to see what's going on. For one, we failed to execute add event listener. And the reason why is because we only provided this thing with one argument, right? And the first argument needs to be, oh, we have another comment. Yeah, so the great thing about these is they are all recorded. So you can scroll, rewind, and look at the beginning, start from the beginning if you want. Okay, so long story short, we didn't tell the button what event to add an event. We didn't tell the button what event to listen for. And that event is going to be the click event. Okay. So that should fix this. So now, if we go to console log, we console log the 3, which is huge. But this doesn't update the display yet. So I'm going to remove the console log. And the reason why it's not doing anything is because we didn't actually call update display. So let's change update display. Okay. It's still loading. Nice. So look at that. One thing that's kind of weird is, yeah, I guess that's right. Okay, cool. So, okay, this is looking actually pretty good. But one thing that is going to be an issue is, notice if I put a decimal and I do this multiple times, that's not good. Also, that's not good either. Whoa, that's really bad. Okay, so we have a couple issues to fix right now. First and foremost, let's figure out how to clear the screen, and then we'll figure out what's going on with all this weirdness over here. So to clear the screen, we basically need to just add, well, there are 3 issues here. First, we need to figure out how to not have so many periods over here. And that's pretty simple. We just need to do a check over here. And we'll just say, hey, if the number is equal to a period and this dot current operand, you know, already includes a period, we should return. We should basically, it should be a no op. We shouldn't do anything. So now, if I put a period, I can't put more. So that's good. We fixed that. Now let's fix the situation where the all clear button doesn't work. So let's go to all clear. I'll say add an event listener. Cool. And we'll say calculator.clear and then calculator.update display. So the clear button is going to be very simple. Okay. So it's going to just be like this. And we're going to set everything back to its original values. Okay. So let's see if that works. Nice. That did work. So that's good. Nice. Okay, so what's next? I think we need to now fix the operations because we already have append looking good. We could do delete. Yeah, I guess we can do delete. Delete's shouldn't be that hard. So let's copy this again, and let's say, hey, delete button. Okay. Add an event listener. Click. Okay. Calculator. Delete. Nice. Also, one thing I realized, I like to have my variables as close as possible to where they're used. So I'm going to put this delete over here. I'm also going to put the all clear over here. And then I'm going to put the number buttons over here. Nice. Now delete is pretty simple, right? So all we have to do is just go in and say, hey, we need to, right? So if we have a bunch of numbers, we want to remove this last. We had a 3. We want to remove this last 3. And so to do that, this .current operand is just a string. So I'm going to copy this. I'm just going to say, hey, let's split this, or let's slice this. And VS Code is great. Again, gives you the documentation. It says where to start and end. It's basically like you're taking like a section of the string, as it just says, section of the string. And one shorthand way you can do this is you can just say -1, which basically says go to the last character, or the second to last character. Okay. So let's see if this works. So we have 3, delete, and that didn't work as we might have wanted it to, right? That took away everything. So it looks like what this is doing, or wait, hold on. Let's do 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then let's do delete. So it's taking everything but 4. Right, so I might have messed up the syntax, though it should be -1. So that takes up the first one, which is good. Oh, I need to specify a start. So that's my mistake. So it should be like this. Okay. And sorry guys, I just need to respond to something real quick. Oh. All right, cool. All right, so we have our delete working as expected, right? So we have 223, removes the 3, which is good. We can update our display, we can clear everything. So this is actually starting to look pretty good. What we still need though is our equals button and our operation button, okay? So operations are pretty important. So I think we should do that next before we even think about going to equals. So, okay, so there we go. And this is going to be similar to the number buttons one. Data operations, good. Yeah, so we're going to make a new function and it's going to be called set operation. Okay. Okay, no comments. Very good. All right, so set operation. So set operation, that's your, this is going to do a couple things for us. Set operation, and it's going to take an operation, which is just a string. And first thing we want to do is we want to avoid the situation where you put an operation in and there's nothing that actually is on the screen yet, right? So what we can do for that is we could just say, hey, if, the number, or sorry, there's no number here. I was looking at the wrong thing. Yeah, if the current operand, okay, is there we go, equal to basically an empty string, we need to get out of there basically. Like that's not good. Okay, this is good. All right, now what we want to do is we want to do a few things. We basically want to alternate all. We want to alter all three of our main instance variables. So this dot operation, right? This is probably the most simple part to do. Equals operation. Okay. This dot previous operand. That's actually going to become the current operand, right? Because we want whatever is in the current operand to move up to the previous operand, and that's going to make more sense in a second. So, oops. Oh, I already made a, nope, that should be fine. Okay. So the previous operand equals the current operand, and I'm getting so many calls right now. All right, and this dot current operand, we're going to set that equal to nothing. Okay. And the other thing we want to do is we now want to alternate the previous operand div. Okay. So this is going to become sorry, 1 second, guys. Okay, good. I'm back. No comments? All right, we are good. So, what we just did with the set operation, and this will become more clear now that this code should hopefully be working, is if we do something like 1 and then plus. Notice how that 1 goes up here. And then we could do something like 9. Nice. So now I have both 1 and 9. I mean, equals doesn't work yet, but once equals does, that should do what we want to do. The other thing that I notice is 1 doesn't have the operation next to it. Okay. So we should do that somehow. And what we're going to do, the way we're going to do that is I'm going to say, hey, if this dot operation is not empty, so that means we have some sort of operation going on right now. Then we're just going to set it like this. Actually, probably a better way of doing this. Yeah, this is fine. So, and we're going to say, this is a nice JavaScript shorthand we're about to do right now. We're going to say this dot previous operand. So this converts whatever is in the variable into a string. And we're also going to add the operation. Okay. All right. So hopefully that makes sense, and I will show how that looks like in a bit. If there isn't a previous operation, frankly, the previous operand div should be empty because there should never be a previous operand if the operation is empty. So we're going to do that right here. We're going to say if there is no previous operation, this should be straight up empty. Okay. Okay, let's see if that works. So 2 times, nice, 6 is good. Okay. And then if I do times, now that goes up there, and we can fix that later because that should actually do an operation. Okay, we are getting very close to a working calculator. Last thing we really have to do is the bread and butter, the crux of all this, which is the equals. Okay. 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 All right, so equals button, we add the event listener, and this is going to do our last function that we need to add to this calculator, which is basically a compute function. And that's going to be up here. And the compute function is it's not too complicated at the end of the day. If you're familiar with the switch statement, it's basically like a better way of doing a bunch of if-else statements. All we really want to do is know what our operation is, and based on what our operation is, do that operation on our current operand and previous operand. So what I mean by that is, let's set up previous equals parse float. Now parse float is a great thing. It basically takes a string, turns it into a decimal number. And we are going to get our current operand, previous operand. Okay, good. I almost left that crash, which wouldn't be the end of the world, but not ideal. Okay, const current equals parse floats this dot current operand. Okay, and then let's do some error checking. So let's say if what this is NaN. That stands for is not a number. So if the previous value, for whatever reason, isn't a number, maybe we just didn't supply a value yet, or the current value is not a number, okay, we are going to just straight up return because there's nothing we can at that point really do. Okay. Now we get into the switch statement. Okay, so the switch statement is we're going to make a case statement based off of what the current operation is. So switch dot current operation. Okay. Okay. And get in. Okay, that's good. And to make a switch statement, you basically just do cases. So, for example, our first case over here will be the division sign. So I need to go and get that back somehow. So we talked about the division symbol earlier. And for those who are only tuning in now, to get this symbol, I just copied it straight up from the web. Nothing too crazy. Okay. So division is the first one. So also let's create a variable called result. And what's going on here? Hold on 1 second, guys. All right. All right, I think we're good. So back to this. I'm going to set the result based off of previous and current. Okay. And then for any switch statement, you need a break keyword. And so the purpose of the break keyword, actually let me add another switch statement so that you guys understand the purpose if you're not familiar with this. So I'm going to add another case statement basically for multiplying, and that equals previous times current. So if we didn't have this break statement, what would happen is result would equal previous divided by current, and then we go to the next statement and say, well, actually previous equals previous times, or sorry, result equals previous times current, right? So it'll just keep falling through the switch statement, which we don't want it to do. So we add this break statement after each case. Okay. Another one we want is next is plus. Okay, result equals previous plus current break. Okay, and then case finally minus. Okay, and result equals previous minus current. Okay, and we do the same thing, we break. We also need a default case. So this is just what happens when all else fails. And honestly, there shouldn't be a default case because if you reach this state, I'm not really sure how you got to this state, but we'll just go with it and we'll just say the result equals nothing. The result just straight up equals 0. Okay. Cool. So now we can finally set everything up now because we're done with the switch statement and we know what the result is. At that point, you can kind of guess what will happen after this. We just need to say, hey, this dot current operand equals result, right? Dot toString, and this dot previous operand is going to equal the empty string. And then finally, this dot operation is also going to equal the empty string. Okay? So we can finally test this. There's always bugs in programming, so we should expect that we're going to get a bug here. And already we're getting a bug because I cannot do anything with this calculator right now. So let's see what's going on. Whenever you're working with web development or any JavaScript, assuming it's just straight vanilla JavaScript and you're in the browser, you typically want to go to the Chrome extension and fix it from there. And we have an unexpected token on line 98. Okay. Okay, so const is definitely a keyword. So there has to be a different issue going on here. And my guess is we have some sort of, yeah, something's not right here. Because, yeah, this doesn't look right. I'll tell you why it doesn't look right. I noticed that there's a red line for this bracket over here, which typically means we have a missing bracket somewhere, right? And I do not know where. But this is telling me we have that. So, all right, another bug breaking tool or workflow that I usually do is if something's not working, just try to revert it to the previous state where it was working. And we definitely had this working before compute was in here. And compute is not the problem because this is working with or compute. So that's pretty interesting. We had clear working. Okay. I don't actually think this is the issue, but I'm wondering why it's complaining specifically about that. Unexpected identifier. Line 97. Huh. This is interesting. Let's try to go to the actual code. And guys, feel free to also brainstorm with me. That's kind of part of the point of this live stream. So this isn't good, right? This is complaining that this shouldn't be anything, and our current error description is unexpected identifier, right? So I have to ask myself, did something change here, right? That would prevent this from, finding this operand. So data previous operand, nothing changed there. So I'm going to go back to setting this as const. I'm also going to just rule out the possibility that we're missing a bracket somewhere. That's a hold on, I don't want to lose any of this, honestly. So I'm just going to copy this into something else. Hey, very good. Thanks for the shout out, bro. I just saw this comment. Okay, where am I? Okay, so I'm just going to put this as scratchpad.js. And this is classic programming where you just have to figure out what's going on. And I'm glad this happened because oftentimes you see people coding, you see people going through making these big projects, and you're over there stuck, frustrated with what you're doing, right? Because you're stuck with this one bug. but dealing with bugs is just part of the process when you're programming. So I'm glad this is happening so that we can all see what that process is like, and we can go over like debugging tricks, right? So in this case, I'm going to cut this out, save it, and see if I still get anything. Good. So this is good news because that tells us that this has nothing to do with our calculator class, right? It has pretty much everything to do with something happening locally over here. Okay. Next, what I'm going to do is remove all this stuff and just have this. Okay. And I finally found where the missing bracket is, right here. See that? That's funny. And you can't get tripped up with stuff like this. Like, this just happens all the time. For me, I was missing my first facing bracket right here. Right? So for any of those watching who watch this later, I'm going to leave this here just so everyone can see how it's so easy to get tripped up in these sort of things. Anyway, so that's that. Ooh, we have another error. Good. Okay. Uncaught error. Cannot read add event listener of null. Okay. 130. So basically this is telling me that equals button isn't good, right? And why is that? Well, the first thing I'm going to say is maybe well, I'll tell you exactly why. We don't have a tag for our equals button. So I'm going to change this to data equals. And so now that error just magically goes away, which is great. So now we can finally test our equals functionality. Okay. So, whoa, I accidentally pressed save. I always do this whenever I'm coding. After every line, I just automatically press Control plus S, which is the shorthand for saving, just because you never want to lose any of this stuff. Yeah, no, definitely. I just saw the comment. You have to, because if you let these errors get to you, it can be very frustrating. You'll end up quitting, and I've done that a lot. I've gotten frustrated, and then I just quit what I was doing. But it's better to just use it as a learning or teaching moment. But okay, so 3 plus 9. Hopefully this works. And that does not work. That's funny. So it went to 0. Why did it go to 0? Oh, I see why. Because, well, actually, before I just blurt out what the answer is, why don't we just go through this, right? So this went to 0, which is telling me clearly that it went straight to the default case, right? Which means all of these cases didn't work for whatever reason. And we need to understand why. So, and I'll tell you exactly why. The reason is because the name of our variable is operation. But we end up switching based on current operation. I don't know why I called it current operation, but hey, it should just be operation. So anyway, we go back to this. Whoa. Oh, it was still loading. So we go back to this. We do 2 times 8, 16. Boom. Look at that. It's working. Let's try multiplying that times 6. Now, here's a corner case. What happens if we press multiply again? What should happen is 6 should multiply by 16, and that should go into the previous operand, right? But look what happens instead. Instead, nothing happens. So we should modify our set operation and be like, yo, if this dot current operand, if this is not empty, right? If that's not empty, guess what we're gonna do? we're going to call that compute function that we just made. Okay, so now if I do 2 times 3, then that times 3, yo, that works. 18 times 3 times 3, look at that. That's beautiful. I did that again. I just pressed save inside of whatever. Okay. All right, I'll clear that. Guys, we're looking pretty good over here. Everything is doing what it needs to do. We've actually we actually already been streaming for an hour and a half. So this is already over what I was expecting. But I do want to show one last thing. I do think two of my biggest things about programming is rolling with the punches when it comes to figuring out errors, and then the other thing is styling. I'm just a style freak. I like things looking good, but also it's just helpful because you're going to come back to see your code and you're not going to know what the heck you were coding. So I'm going to add just some documentation here. Okay, and in some of my next videos, I'm gonna really dive into why some of this styling is important, and you'll see a lot of this styling happen, especially at any company that needs to scale its JavaScript programming. So I currently work at Google, and they have a public JavaScript guide out there that I highly recommend anyone going through. But I'm gonna spend some time myself just showing you guys in later videos why styling is important, right? But in this case, we're just saying, hey, we have a parameter. We expect it to be a number, right? That's all this saying. And we can add a little description. We can say the number to append to the current operand, right? And appends a number to the current operand. And this might seem redundant given how simple, or you could argue this isn't simple, right? It might seem redundant given that we just went through all of this and you already know what everything does. But, trust me, it'll make you want to look at the code later. And plus, it just helps make the code make more sense, right, in the long term. Sets the operation. So, for example, addition. Okay. And this is going to be a string operation. Okay, the operation set. Okay. So guys, like I was saying, I'm about to have to end this live stream. So I'm going to add this last bit of styling, but please add any comments so I can see them before I have to leave. But yeah, clears the contents of the calculator. And then other logistical things, I'm going to actually make a poll next time for people. Remember to hit the subscribe button so I can contact you. Or if you're already on the email list, then I already have a way to contact you. And then we'll be able to, I'll be able to set a poll and see what people are interested in next. Calculator was the one that was most requested when I originally sent out this post about live streaming. But there are definitely some other projects that people are interested in. Yeah, no worries. I'm glad to do it. This was fun. And like I said, I'm going to try to make sure that we have a set time that everyone can, or at least more people can visit this. But either way, I'm going to post this on YouTube so that anyone can see this. It's going to be permanent. I'm not going to do much editing at all, basically because I like people seeing the hard parts of coding and the parts where like the frustrating parts. Okay, I'm just going to add these last two comments because, like I said, I'm a style freak. So, okay, this makes a basic calculation. Also, I posted this code on my GitHub, and that should be in the description. And then I also linked to Web Dev Simplified. He came up with this design. I thought it was very nice, very beautiful. So shout out to him. And he does a lot of web dev videos. So if you're interested in that type of stuff, highly recommend check out his content. Okay, last function. Updates the display of the calculator. Okay. Okay, very good. Yeah, this one, guys. So I'll be in touch about next videos, next projects, polls, whatever, to make sure we can get everyone on the same page. Cool. Now it's time to figure out how to end the stream. Oh, nice. All right.